You were told that education, hard work, and the right career ladder would create stability. Then, work changed housing, moved farther away. Phones made everyone permanently reachable, and the latter began to look more like a collection of temporary platforms. If you are among millennials navigating promises that changed while they were pursuing them, ask what this experience is responding to and what would make it more useful. That question opens a better conversation than another quick judgment about your personality. People sometimes reduce the psychology often associated with millennials to reducing millennials to entitlement, fragility, job hopping, or an obsession with technology. That conclusion is too small to explain the experience. Many millennials entered adulthood during rapid digital change and economic uncertainty. Their language around burnout, flexibility, and meaningful work may reflect adaptation to those conditions rather than a simple lack of resilience. The behavior can make sense without being ideal, and understanding its purpose does not excuse every consequence. There is no single personality type behind the psychology often associated with millennials. Temperament, learning, stress, relationships, culture, and practical circumstances can combine in different proportions. Treat this explanation as a framework, not a diagnosis, and keep only what matches the evidence of your life. Start with one possible mechanism. Education was often presented as a reliable path even as its cost and career payoff became less predictable. Hold this first explanation lightly and compare it with what your body choices and energy actually do. Compare this first clue across several situations before deciding what it means. Watch how that looks in a workday. A work message arrives at night and feels urgent because availability has become part of professional identity. In the first scene, the need beneath the behavior matters more than how the behavior looks from outside. Read the first scene through need timing and aftermath rather than appearance. A second layer is easy to miss. Social media turned identity, friendship, comparison, and professional visibility into overlapping spaces. The second explanation becomes useful only when the same conditions repeatedly produce a similar response. Use the second clue only if it predicts more than one response. The experience becomes clearer in private. Friends reach traditional milestones at different speeds, while comparison compresses those differences into one feed. The private scene reveals whether the response brings genuine recovery or merely delays discomfort. Use the private example to compare real recovery with delayed discomfort. The third piece concerns attention. Economic instability encouraged flexibility while making long-term milestones feel harder to plan. For the third explanation, distinguish what you observed from the meaning you assigned afterward. Keep observation and interpretation separate while testing the third clue. Social situations add another clue. You change roles to gain pay or growth, then hear the move described as a failure of loyalty. The social scene shows what happens when belonging, visibility, or another person's expectations enter the equation. Let the social example reveal the extra weight of belonging and visibility. Another part appears under pressure. Constant connectivity blurred the boundary between work, leisure news, and social obligation. This fourth possibility matters most when pressure changes the intensity, timing, or cost of the response. Pressure is the comparison point for the fourth clue. Now place the same response inside a stressful week. Therapy language helps name a boundary, but sometimes becomes a shortcut replacing a difficult conversation. The stressful week example separates a stable preference from a temporary response to depleted capacity. Use the stressful example to check whether depleted capacity changes the response. A final mechanism helps explain repetition. A desire for meaningful work can protect values, but also make ordinary jobs carry impossible expectations. The fifth explanation should increase choice. Discard it if it only supplies a more sophisticated insult. A useful fifth clue creates options instead of another fixed identity. One final scene separates a trait from a trap. You value flexibility, yet feel tired of rebuilding certainty every few years. The final scene asks whether the behavior remains flexible when circumstances, energy, or relationships change. Let the final example test whether choice remains available as circumstances change. To make the millennial adaptation pattern more precise, compare 3 conditions: a rested day, a depleted day, and a day spent with people who feel safe. Notice whether the response changes in speed, intensity, or cost. If it shifts with context, the context belongs in the explanation. That comparison prevents one difficult moment from becoming a permanent identity. Look for a counterexample to millennial adaptation as carefully as you look for confirmation. Remember a time when the usual response did not happen, happened less strongly, or ended sooner. Ask what was different about preparation, energy, environment, expectations, and support. A counterexample reveals the conditions that make greater choice possible. The hidden cost of millennial adaptation deserves equal honesty. Generational explanation provides context, but it becomes limiting when every disappointment is assigned to a cohort and individual choices disappear from view. Preserve whatever the response protects, connects, restores, or clarifies. Change the portion, reducing freedom, straining trust, or moving you farther from what you value. Start by observing the pattern. Separate personal worth from the timeline of housing, marriage, parenthood, or career titles. A second step is practical. Create communication boundaries that make flexibility sustainable rather than permanently available. Third, make the change specific. Use psychological language to clarify behavior, and needs not to diagnose everyone who disappoints you. Fourth, make the new response repeatable. Define meaningful work realistically, and allow income, craft, service, and identity to occupy different proportions. Fifth, use support carefully. Build local and offline relationships that are not measured by visibility or professional usefulness. Sixth, review what actually happened. Plan in shorter horizons when the future is uncertain while preserving a few long-term values. Finally, know when more support is needed. Treat adaptation as a skill you already possess, then direct it towards stability fitting the life you have now. Millennial is a broad cohort label, not a diagnosis or destiny. Culture, geography, race, class, family, and individual history shape people more precisely than generation alone. Flexibility means choosing among several responses instead of being pushed into one move. An understandable response does not have to become the only move available. Try one 7-day experiment designed for millennial adaptation, but do not repeat a generic ritual every day. Choose one relevant action, use it in a real situation, and record the outcome. Keep, revise, or discard the experiment according to evidence rather than guilt. The original ladder may not have delivered what it promised. That does not mean your effort was foolish or your future is empty. Stop measuring your life against an outdated map and build stability from the conditions actually here. The goal is not a new label. It is enough understanding and flexibility to make a more deliberate next choice.